The United States has long been a destination for immigrants from around the world. Immigrants are people who leave one country to settle in another. And New York City has a rich tradition of welcoming people from other lands. Ellis Island and Castle Garden were usually the first stops for immigrants coming from Europe and other distant regions. The first major wave of immigration started in 1815, after a long series of wars ended in Europe. Millions of people, most of them from Germany, Great Britain, and Ireland, came to New York eager to escape their unstable homelands. Another wave of immigration took place in the late 1840s as a result of the Irish potato famine. A famine is a drastic and wide-reaching food shortage. Potatoes were the primary food source for most of the Irish population. But in the 1840s, a disease spread across the country, causing potato plants to turn black and rot. The famine lasted for 5 years, from 1845 through 1849. During this period, approximately 1 million Irish died of starvation and disease. And nearly 1 million came to America to begin new lives. For decades after the famine, Irish Americans would tell stories of starving women and children whose mouths were green from eating grass. Life for many of these new Americans would be considerably better in New York. Soon, immigrants from Norway and Sweden began to arrive. And Chinese immigrants also came to the U.S. in great numbers. A second major wave of immigration to New York began around 1880, and the people came from Eastern and Southern Europe. Seeking economic opportunity, large numbers of Italians, Poles, and Hungarians came to the United States. And Eastern European Jews came in search of religious freedom. Between 1880 and 1920, 4.1 million Italians entered the U.S., and the Italian population in New York exploded, with more than 2,000 community organizations in New York City alone. The population of Eastern European Jews also grew at an amazing rate. They were more likely to stay in the U.S. than other groups. By 1920, half of the Jewish population in the U.S. lived in New York City. Most immigrants had similar experiences during their journey to the U.S. They traveled by ship. The poorer passengers spent the journey in steerage, a section near the bottom of the ship that provided the cheapest accommodations. They endured cramped quarters and weeks of seasickness while crossing rough Atlantic waters. Upon arrival, steerage and third-class passengers were sent to the immigration stations Castle Garden or Ellis Island. Here, they underwent a medical exam and legal inspection. Those who had contagious diseases or legal problems were sent back to their homelands. About 2% of immigrants were excluded for these reasons. But most immigrants were allowed to enter the U.S. to begin their new lives and face a new set of obstacles and hardships.